right. That was awesome worship. Yeah, give it up for the worship team. Yeah. All right. We are continuing our The Perfect Fit series, and tonight we have a special guest. His name is Kerry Stein. He has been here. He's on his 41st year here at New Spring. It was actually Messiah before when he actually came, and so he has been here for a very long time, and he actually came when he was your age. So really excited. He's been on staff here since 2012, right, Kerry? Yes, so he has been here for a very long time, but he has seen a lot of ways God's worked. So give it up for Kerry Stein. He's our maintenance director here, so he's going to speak to us tonight. So give him a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Haley. Thank you very much. And Patrick, if you can hear me, my radio is on the chair over on the west side of the auditorium. So I am the maintenance director here. I'm the head janitor, essentially, is what I am, okay? It sounds really glorious. Being the maintenance director, I know you all are thinking, wow, I want to be a maintenance director. But there's a lot to it, and I'll tell you about that as we go along, but it's titled Perfect Fit, and to tell you why I fit here at New Spring is I have to sort of tell you my whole story. And so hopefully I won't bore you too much with that. I was born back, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going back that far. I'm not going back, but I am going back to 8 years old, and so I was saved. Well, first off, how many of you were saved at home as believers? And how many of you were saved here at New Spring Church? Some of those, okay. So I was saved because of a bus, okay? And the bus had a name. The bus's name was Luke. So back in the early 70s, the big thing for churches was to have these bus ministries that would go out and they would pick up children from neighborhoods and they would bring them to churches. There was this church in Indiana that claimed that they had an attendance of 40,000 people, but they had like 100 or more buses running out and picking up these kids, and it really increased their numbers. So there was a church here in town, and that's what they did. Olivet Baptist Church is still going. It's a great church on the west side of town. I lived in Park City, and they drove all the way to Park City, and they picked me up to go to church. My mom let them take me in that bus. It was a different world than we live in today, okay? For New Spring, we just couldn't do that because of the world we live in. It just couldn't happen. There's things we used to do that we can't do anymore because of the world we live in. So they picked me up, they took me to church, and one Sunday, I was in a Sunday school class, and I would go there, and then one day they had us go in and sit in the big church after Sunday school. Actually, I think they did that more than once. And we sat in the big church, and the pastor explained the plan of salvation. And as an 8-year-old, I knew that I needed that, okay? Here I was, as an 8-year-old, I was sort of, run with the kids in the neighborhood, was sort of foul-mouthed and all that sort of thing. And when I believed in Jesus, I knew that God didn't want me to do that anymore. So I quit doing that. And I was a really good kid. I was the kind of kid, when the teacher said to do something, I was the one that did it. And then if somebody else didn't do it, I was either talking to them about it or telling the teacher about it, that they weren't doing it. So I was that guy. And so I was a great kid. And things went along, but we moved. I couldn't go to that church anymore, and my family did not go to church. Did not go to church at all. And so after that point, up through high school, the times that I actually went to a church service on Sunday probably count maybe one hand and for sure two hands, so it was very little. But yet, I knew that Jesus loved me and that I believed in him as my Savior. And so I went through high school. I did go to some church camps over the years and things like that. But as you get older, I got into high school, and back then, I'm not knocking you guys that are still living at home. Don't think that I am. But back then, when you got to be 18, you wanted to get out of the house, okay? And that's what I wanted to do, and I did. Moved in with some buddies, and we lived in this apartment. It's a different age, so don't be too shocked. Three of us lived in this 2-bedroom apartment. There were only 2 beds in there, and I shared a bed with my buddy, okay? And nobody thought that it was weird back then, all right? So did that, but I ended up having to move back home. I got sick, and so things went on, and I moved out with a buddy of mine later on into Wichita, and that's where things sort of went off the rails. I was always the good kid, did the right thing. I had friends that were teachers that I ran around with. My high school teachers. I was always tall. I didn't look like a high schooler, but things went off the rails. Started drinking. Started running with wild women, and started doing drugs and things like that. And it just really went off the rails. But I still thought that, I knew what was going on until finally one day things got so bad that I called my mom and I said, I've got to do something different. I'm in really not in a good way here. And so my buddy that I lived with, he grew up Catholic, and I said, something's not right here. We ought to go to church. And so I said, I'll go to church with you. He's Catholic. We'll go one Sunday, and the next Sunday, there's this church right down the street here. We'll run down there and go to that. So we went to the Catholic church, and then the next Sunday, we went to what was then Messiah Baptist Church. And I went in there, and we left. He never came back, and I never quit going. And so the next Sunday that I went, what a big impact this was to me is I can tell you the name of the guy that greeted me at the door. I can tell you the name of my Sunday school teacher. Everybody involved with that, I still remember. It had a huge impact on my life. And I turned from where I was at in life to what God was leading me to do. And so a huge part of that was this college and career group that you're all college and career age, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger, whatever's going on with that. But this college and career group came together, and it was just a bunch of different people from all different walks. And I had just gotten into what was an apprenticeship with the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union. I was going to be a welder, but it didn't end up being that way, and I ended up doing commercial and industrial heating and air conditioning. So here this was, I was starting to do that. We had people that were in the military, people that were had boyfriends or girlfriends that were in the military or worked for Boeing. It was just a really diverse group, but we gelled together really well. And so that's one thing that I'd like to talk about today for you guys is it's real easy to come to New Spring Church because it's so big and just come in here and sit and listen to Daniel or Haley or whoever else is speaking to you guys and just come in here and, do chit-chat with everybody here and then walk out the door and have no connection to anybody else here. But if you really want to thrive, you have got to make connections with the people here. And I know there's a lot of you that are sitting here going, well, I'm really shy and I don't really, do that sort of thing well. But there's also people in here that are quite extroverted and that sort of thing. And so I'm going to throw this on you extroverts. You're the ones that need to be out there really talking to people and so we didn't just get together at New Spring, we got together at Taco Shop and at Pizza Hut. And we went to things together. And there's a few people that had houses, and we would go over to their houses. I had some friends, we would go over to this guy's house, and he thought he was an Aikido master. Who knows what Aikido is? Okay, that's a form of martial arts. And, they take and grab your pinky and, take you to the ground type of thing. So we would go over there, and he thought he was an Aikido master, and he was really good at it, but he was extremely slow. And we would go over there, and we would box and kickbox and things like that. And it was a really odd time. But things like that, we had ski trips together that we set up. And, those kinds of things that we set up were outside of the church. And so that's what you guys need to do. You guys need to get together with each other and somehow connect. And I'd like to say that I have the magic answer to that, but I don't, other than you're already here and all these other people are right around you right now. And so you need each other. So I'm going to move on from that. So with that, you may be asking yourself, how do I find my perfect fit? And so this is how I sort of found my perfect fit at New Spring. And it didn't happen in a year or two. It happened over 30 years that I found my perfect fit here at New Spring. So being a part of the college and career, you seem like you're sort of on the outside, but there was this really small children's church that we had. And so me and several of the other guys in there and girls, we started helping in this children's church because they couldn't get anybody else to help in there. And we did. That's what we did. How many of you know who Dan Benner is, who plays the guitar in the main services? I mean, that guy, he has been here longer than I have, okay? And I helped with his kids when they were growing up in that children's church. And it was the neatest thing to be a part of that. And we did things that we can't do today. We took the kids on fishing trips and did little camps and just all kinds of weird things that we did. We did these bike rodeos and such. And that was my start of being involved at New Spring. And so for you guys, there are opportunities to serve here at New Spring, and I don't know how many people served. The one person that I know that serves here, he works here too, Mitchell back there, okay? He works for me. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. And then the guy playing the bass here today, Patrick, he works for me as well. And we have the best team here at New Spring. It's hard to imagine that the best team at New Spring is the maintenance team, but it really is. We have a great time doing what we do, and we get to do something that none of the other ministries do, and I'll tell you about that later. Don't let me forget it, though. So you need to remind me not to forget what I wanted to tell you. Okay, so So I started doing that, and I became involved, really involved with that, and I would help out every weekend. If there was something going on that I could be involved with, I was involved with it. And so because of that, I got married in the process, and that's the worst thing about college and career, is that you get a really good group together and then they get married and then they go off, And that's the worst thing about college and career, I will say that. So, and just be forewarned, if you guys really connect, at some point you all get married and then it's done for. And so, and it all has to start over again. It's this constant going like this. So I got married, and so I wasn't in college and career anymore. So my wife and I, after a few years, guess what we did? We taught college and career is what we did. We took it over. And And we worked with it, and we worked with it. And like I said, you'd have a great group, and then they'd all get married, and then it would just like that. Well, as time went on, another couple came in. They took over college and career, and we taught first grade Sunday school. Well, in the midst of all that, because I was so involved and because I gave to New Spring, I ended up on the board of trustees. And I was pretty young, really. I was very early 20s when I got on the board of trustees at New Spring. And so I was involved with that for years and years. But through everything that New Spring's done, I've been on the board of trustees. I taught college and career. I've taught adult classes. We came here to this location. I was on the building committee, and we built this building, and my wife and I taught first grade Sunday school, and I was an incredibly engaging Sunday school teacher for first grade. I can tell you that. I had these rules that I would always go over with the kids, and do you know what my number one rule was? And I don't see anybody in here that would have been here at that, when I was a Sunday school teacher, but guess what my number one rule was for first graders? No, that wasn't it. But that should have been, but that wasn't it. No, it was no picking your nose. Yeah, unless you've worked with first graders, and you're up there trying to, with your front flannel graph, trying to teach them about Joseph and that sort of thing, and you've got some kid picking his nose, it's difficult to teach when you've got that going on. So no picking your nose. But anyway, so I did all that. And I became more involved. Like I said, I was on the board of trustees. Did this, and then New Spring, because we were a certain size, and hopefully you've all heard Mark talk about this at some point. We decided that most of our growth at New Spring came because people came from other churches because they were mad about something. And it wasn't because we were drawing in people that hadn't heard about Christ. We were just getting people that were upset at someplace else. And Mark said, that's not right. We need to be focused on the people that aren't here. And so that's what New Spring is today. We're focused on the people who aren't here. We want them to come. In my mind, I would like to have everybody in the city of Wichita come to New Spring at least once. Whether they go to another church or not, I don't care, but I'd like them to come to New Spring once because at least I know that they've heard the gospel when they come here to New Spring. And then all those other people that aren't going to church, well, we want them to be here at New Spring, of course. And so just like we want you guys to be here. So I was involved with all of that, and then they changed we changed our philosophy. They changed we didn't do Sunday school anymore. We did a different program similar to Route 252, but it wasn't quite as dynamic as that. And so we stopped being first grade Sunday school teachers, and I wasn't mad about it. And it wasn't that I wanted to get out of it either, but it was better. As good as I was as a Sunday school teacher, I bet most of the kids, when they walked out of my Sunday school class and they got in the car with their parents and they'd go, "What did you learn about today?" And the kid would probably get sort of glassy-eyed and go, Jesus and God, and maybe prayer, something like that. But the program we have today is far, 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 far exceeds what I was involved with. And it wasn't that I wasn't good at it or anything, it just was different. So things changed. I continued to work with kids here at New Spring, but I just became more and more involved until finally, I think one day, Mark said, Kerry's around here so much, we ought to just start paying him. And actually, at the time, the groups were just really getting started here at New Spring, and Mark asked me to come on and help with that, and so I did. I came on and I worked with that for a year or two, and this is where I want to get try to bring something out that's hard for people to get a hold of, I think. So I came on, I did that for a couple years, and after, at a certain point, I just came to the realization that I was not getting it. I mean, it really wasn't my thing to be over groups. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I could do in it really well, but I wasn't visionary enough for it to really make it thrive. And I went and talked to Mark, and I said, Mark, I'm just not really getting this. And Mark agreed with me, or at least, whatever. But he didn't. I figured, well, that's going to be the end of it. He's going to say, okay, well, we'll part ways and go on. But he didn't do that. They ended up said, well, we've got things going on with the kids ministry, and you have worked with the kids ministry, and so we're going to ask you to come in and be with them. And so that's what I did. I ended up working with the Big Idea Experience. Most of you don't know what that is, but we used to go into the public schools with a show, and it was a 45-minute, and we would take lights and speakers and props and all of this stuff and load it up in a van and a trailer and go to a school and set it up and do this assembly for the school, and we would tear it down and go to another school, and we'd do as many as 4 or 5 in a day going around doing these assemblies. And we did that until it became so big that we couldn't do it anymore. It was just beyond our capability, and they went to doing it on video. And now way more schools can access the materials, the skits, everything involved with it, and so that's really great. So from that, about that time, Billy Poor, our executive pastor, who was running not only building buildings here and making sure everything ran around the church. He was also making sure that it was clean and all of this stuff, and it was just way more than he could handle. And he came to me and said, Kerry, I can't handle this. I need help. And I would like you to move into the maintenance director position. And I thought about it. I really didn't have to think about it too long. And I thought, that's really what I'm good at. Because I hear all these years, I hadn't really talked about it, but I had been in heating and air conditioning and commercial and industrial heating and air conditioning. And I also worked construction as well. And so there was a lot of this about the inside workings of the buildings and that sort of thing. And so I said, sure, I'll do it. And I took it over. And it would be easy to just think of this as a job. And it would be easy for Mitchell to think of it as a job, or Patrick, or any of the other people that work for me. But it's not just a job. We are very fortunate on the maintenance team here at New Spring to be able to be involved with every ministry here. And we're probably the only team here at New Spring that can say that. We support them by setting up this, like just for today. We set this up every week for you guys, make sure this place is clean, make sure that Haley and Daniel or whoever's up here can come up here and you're not looking around on the floor going, man, that looks terrible. Because that's the kind of thing that distracts people. And we get to, for like Judgment House that was just here, we did all kinds of things behind the scenes as far as getting things ready, helping people get their sets set up, Leading the Way that was here. We support Leading the Way tremendously. We work really hard, a lot of hours involved with that. And so we don't look at what we do as a job here at New Spring. We look at what we do here as a ministry just as important as any other ministry here, because if we don't do our job, they can't do their job. And so it affects Mark, it affects Daniel, it affects the creative team and their ability to be able to do things. It affects the site, the production team, all the lighting and then the sound and everything else that goes. We get to help and be a part of that. So in that, I have found my perfect fit. So for you guys to be able to find your perfect fit, you need to get involved, because that's the only way you're going to find it. It's not if you just sit there and go, wow, I'd like to work at New Spring Church, because everybody sits there at one time or another and thinks, I'd like to work at New Spring Church. But the reality is everybody that works at New Spring Church is really just people. And they have good days and bad days, and sometimes you get crosswise with them and that sort of thing. But we're all brothers and sisters. But it's not a perfect world working at New Spring. But it is incredibly rewarding, and if God has called you to it, and it's your purpose, and you're fit, it's the greatest thing in the world. Are you going to make the most money in the world? No. I mean, I took quite a pay cut to be able to come to New Spring. And most of the people that you see in positions around New Spring have done the same thing, because they believe in what God is doing here at New Spring. They believe at what God will do here in New Spring. And it's just an opportunity that is beyond anything else that you can imagine. So you don't have to remind me, because I covered what I was going to say there in all of that. So I went from what seemed like a failure to me when I came on, because it didn't connect. But God, because I didn't give up, and because Mark believed in me, and Billy believed in me, I was able to find my perfect fit, and I'm able to do what I do here at New Spring, and I get to work with the best team in New Spring. So anyway, I know that hopefully that's helped you out. I want to encourage you to get involved in some fashion, whether it's in here, whether it's in the other ministries that we have here at New Spring, but that is how you find your fit, really.